What if the path to higher consciousness wasn't a mystery, but an actual map you could follow?
In this podcast, we're decoding Alice Bailey's masterpiece, Initiation, Human and Solar, End to End.
I'm Vera.
I'm Owen.
This is the ultimate roadmap for soul evolution, and we're unpacking every single layer.
Can I start with a school memory? Because I think everyone has a version of this one.
Go for it.
You're stuck on something. Some subject, some skill, weeks of it just not making sense. And then one day, and you can never say exactly why it's that day, it clicks. The whole thing reorganizes itself, and suddenly you can't even remember what it was like to not understand it.
And it doesn't unclick.
That's the thing. It never unclicks. And the reason I'm starting there is that this book basically says that experience, that exact experience, scaled all the way up, is like how spiritual evolution works. She literally compares it to a pupil in school suddenly realizing he's mastered the lesson.
Which is today's territory. We're in the second half of chapter 2. Last time was the map of you, the 3 halls of our schooling, and the 3 kinds of knowing. Today is what happens as you move up through those halls. This time she takes the word initiation apart properly. What it really is, where it happens, and this idea waiting at the center of it. At-one-ment.
Yeah, we'll get there. It's worth the wait, I think. So, first thing she does is zoom out. She says initiation is part of the normal process of evolutionary development. When you view it on a large scale, it's not some exotic add-on to life. Consciousness grows by a graded series of awakenings anyway. That's just what consciousness does, you know?
Right, that was the last line of chapter 1, a succession of expansions.
Exactly. But then, seen from the individual side, it narrows down to a moment. The moment when the evolving person definitely apprehends her word, that a certain range of knowledge of the inner kind is theirs. By their own effort, she's careful to say, aided by the advice and suggestions of the watching teachers of the race, but earned by the person.
And she says, those moments of intelligent apprehension follow the monad through its whole long pilgrimage. So this has been happening to us, all along. Little clicks all the way up from the beginning.
All the way up. And an initiation, in the formal sense, is what happens when one of those clicks is big enough. She stacks up what each one amounts to, and it's quite a list. Passing into a higher class in the Hall of Wisdom, the clearer shining forth of the inner fire, a transition from one point of polarization to another,
which, in the language from last episode, means where your consciousness lives has actually moved. Not visited, moved.
Moved house, yeah.
And notice she's still living inside the halls picture from last episode, by the way. The whole path is schooling to her. There's even this line where she calls initiation like the effort in the abstract mind to pass an examination, which I find weirdly grounding, honestly. It's work. It was always work, just work at a level we don't usually give the name to.
Homework for the soul. Okay, and then the realization of an increasing unity with all that lives, a horizon that keeps enlarging until it includes the sphere of creation. That's her phrase. A growing capacity to see and hear on all the planes. And maybe the most practical one, an increased consciousness of God's plans for the world, and an increased ability to enter into those plans and further them.
So every initiation makes you more useful. That thread really runs through this whole book, honestly. The point of the climb is never the view. It's what you can carry afterwards.
And she's got this phrase for what it takes. It's the honor class in the master's school, within reach of those souls whose karma permits and whose efforts suffice, the way she puts it, both. The door has 2 hinges.
Karma permits, efforts suffice. Okay. Now, there's a passage right about here that I think we should, let breathe a bit, because she stops defining for a moment and just describes what initiation leads to.
This is the part I underlined twice, so please.
She says, It leads to the mount whence vision can be had, a vision of the eternal now, where past, present, and future exist as one thing. It leads to the stream that, once entered, sweeps a man onward, until it carries him to the feet of the Lord of the world, to the feet of his Father in heaven. It leads to the cave, within whose walls the pairs of opposites are known, and the secret of good and evil is revealed.
The mount, the stream, the cave.
And then it turns severe. She says it leads to the cross, and to that utter sacrifice which must transpire before perfect liberation is attained. And at the end of it, the initiate stands free of all earth's fetters, held by naught in the three worlds. It leads through the hall of wisdom, too, and puts into a man's hands the key to all information, systemic and cosmic, in graduated sequence. It reveals the hidden mystery at the heart of the solar system, and the horizon keeps widening until the self embraces all selves, including all that is moving and unmoving. That last bit she's quoting from an ancient scripture.
That sounds like the Gita, that phrasing. Moving and unmoving. And what really gets me about that passage is the honesty of the sequence, the mount, the stream, and then the cross. She's not selling a gentle path. The utter sacrifice is right there in the itinerary.
It's in the itinerary because it is the road, but, and this is where she pivots, and it might be the most important pivot in the chapter. After all that grandeur, she turns around and deflates the one thing everybody fixates on, the ceremony.
Yeah, this section I properly love. She says initiation involves ceremony, sure. But that aspect has been emphasized in people's minds, her phrase, perhaps a little to the exclusion of the true significance. Primarily, initiation is the capacity to see, hear, and comprehend, to synthesize and correlate knowledge. That's it. I mean, that's the core faculty.
Not visions, not powers.
Explicitly not. She says it does not necessarily involve the technology of the psychic faculties at all. What it does entail is the inner comprehension that sees the value underlying the form, the capacity that senses the lesson in any given event, like any event. And by means of those comprehensions, a person affects an hourly, weekly, yearly growth and expansion, she says.
Hourly. I really love that she includes hourly. It makes the whole thing, so granular. The path isn't made of mountaintop moments. It's made of Tuesdays, of catching what the day was trying to teach you.
And she rubs it in the best way. This is her pretty much word for word. This process of gradual expansion is the result of the definite effort and strenuous right thinking and living of the aspirant himself, and not of some occult teacher performing an occult rite. She's like dismantling the shortcut fantasy on purpose. Nobody does this to you.
Nobody does it to you. But then, the gradual expansion does lead somewhere. She calls it a crisis.
A crisis, yeah. And at that crisis, and only there, the ceremony enters. She says at that point, the aid of a master is necessitated, and a definite act of initiation is performed. And it's precise. It acts on a particular center, one of the energy centers. It keys the atoms to a certain pitch and enables a new rate of rhythm.
Like tuning an instrument that's finally been strung well enough to hold the note.
That's pretty much it. And then the line that we teased last episode, the one the whole chapter turns on. The ceremony of initiation marks a point of attainment. It does not bring about attainment. As is so often the misconception, it simply marks the recognition, by the watching teachers of the race, of a definite point in evolution reached by the pupil.
The exam certifies. It doesn't confer.
Certifies, never confers. All the becoming happened before, in the ordinary strenuous living. The ceremony recognizes it, and she says it gives two things quite specifically. First, an expansion of consciousness that admits the personality into the wisdom attained by the ego. So the everyday you gets let in, on what the soul already knows. And in the higher initiations, into the consciousness of the monad.
It's like the ground floor gets an intercom to the upper stories.
Something like that. And second, a brief period of enlightenment, wherein the initiate sees that portion of the path that lies ahead to be trodden and shares consciously, for a moment, in the great plan of evolution.
And then it's over. And the real work starts. She's clear about that too. After initiation, the work consists largely in making that expansion of consciousness part of your practical, usable equipment. You've seen the next stretch of road. Now you have to actually walk it.
Okay, so then she gets technical. Where does this happen? In this section, honestly, when I first read it, I had to slow right down. So let's take it slow.
Slow, yeah. So the ceremony takes place on the 3 higher subplanes of the mental plane and on the 3 higher planes, according to the initiation. These are the levels where the causal body lives, the soul's own home ground, which we mapped last episode. And the way she describes it, at the initiations taken there, the 5-pointed star flashes out above the head of the initiate.
Which is such an image. The star over the head.
And she pauses to correct a piece of the tradition here, which I appreciate. Some teachings had said the first 2 initiations happen on the astral plane. And she says, no, that's incorrect. But the mistake is really understandable.
Right.
Because the first 2 are felt so profoundly in the astral body and the physical, the vividness of the effect works out mostly in the emotional life. So the initiate himself might swear that's where it happened. But the major initiations are taken in the causal body, or later, dissociated from it, on the Buddhic and Atmic planes.
The event happens upstairs. The shaking is felt downstairs.
That's the shape of it. And then the final 2 initiations, the ones that set a man free of the 3 worlds entirely. There the image changes, and it's extraordinary. The initiate doesn't just stand under the star anymore. He becomes the 5-pointed star, is how she puts it. It descends upon him, merges in him, and he is seen at its very center.
And that descent is brought about by the initiator, wielding the rod of power, which is a whole subject this book comes back to. There's an entire chapter on the rods, and we'll give it a proper episode down the line.
We will. For now, what the rod's application does here is put the man consciously in touch with the center in the body of the planetary logos of which he is a part. That's her, near enough word for word. And at the 6th and 7th initiations, taken on the Buddhic and Atmic planes, the star blazes forth from within itself, as the esoteric phrase has it, and becomes 7-pointed, and the man enters within the flame.
Enters within the flame. There are sentences in this book you really just have to leave alone, and that's one.
Agreed. Now, alongside all this, there's a quieter, stranger detail. She says, the 4 initiations before adeptship each mark a proportion of what she calls atomic matter in the bodies, the finest, most refined grade of substance. At the first initiation, 1/4 of the body's matter is atomic. At the second, half. At the third, 3/4, and so on to completion.
And quick thing, because the word can trip you up. She doesn't mean atoms like a chemistry class means them. In this literature, atomic matter is the finest, highest grade of substance on any given plane, the top subplane of each level. The glossary at the back of the book defines it exactly that way. So what she's really saying is the vehicles are literally being rebuilt as you go. Not that you know more, the actual fabric of you, refined, percentage by percentage.
Refined, yeah. The instrument gets rebuilt to hold the music. And at the 5th initiation, since Buddhi is the unifying principle, she says the adept lets the lower vehicles go entirely and stands in his Buddhic sheath and creates from there his own body of manifestation.
Meaning a master isn't stuck with a body like we are. He builds one for the work.
For the work, deliberately. And then there's the rays thread. We won't go deep, because, honestly, the ray material runs through the whole book and we'll keep meeting it. But the key line here, each initiation gives the initiate power on the rays, and she's very precise. Power on the rays, not power over the rays. At the 5th, a master controls more or less the 5 rays specially manifesting at the time. At the 6th, he gains power on another. At the 7th, he wields power on all the rays.
And she notes, the 6th initiation marks the point that Christ attained, bringing the synthetic ray of the system under his control, the love-wisdom ray, which ties right back to fact 2 from chapter 1. Whatever this universe is doing, it ends in love. Even the ladder of power ends there. Your own monad's ray is the one you gain power on at length, she says. And the love ray, the synthetic one, is the final ray achieved.
Always back to that. Okay, and then the section that reframes the whole thing. Because you'd assume, wouldn't you, that the 7th initiation, all the rays, free of the 3 worlds, that's the top.
You'd assume, and no, she says almost casually. One great fact to be borne in mind is that the initiations of the planet or of the solar system are but the preparatory initiations of admission into the greater lodge on Sirius.
Serious.
The star, our whole ladder, the entire path this book describes, mount, stream, cave, cross, star, flame, from the Syrian point of view, that's the entrance exam. And she maps it onto masonry, which she says carries the symbolism. The first 4 initiations here correspond to the initiations of the threshold. The 5th makes you, in Syrian terms, an entered apprentice. The 6th is like the 2nd degree, and the 7th planetary initiation makes the adept a master mason of the brotherhood on Sirius.
So a master of the wisdom, a being we can barely conceive of, has, in the larger school, just enrolled. And there's this quiet line sitting next to it, too. Those who pass on after the 5th initiation, who take their further steps elsewhere in the system, all of them are in the logoic consciousness, she says. Which I keep thinking about, you know. Nobody graduates off the map. The map turns out to be a being.
Just walked in the door, holding his apprentice papers. And you remember episode 1? The warning about how a fact for us might be a fraction of a fact for a master? This is her showing us the same law from the other side. Every summit is a doorstep.
Every summit is a doorstep, which is somehow the most comforting, terrifying thing this book says. Okay, and that brings us to the word we promised, at-one-ment.
Right, and let's set it up properly. Because this is one of those places where she takes a word everybody thinks they already know and reads it back with the hyphens in. Atonement. At-one-ment.
The state of being made one.
And her claim is that each successive initiation brings about exactly that, a more complete unification of the personality and the ego. And on the higher levels with the monad. In the book, she puts it like this: the whole evolution of the human spirit is a progressive at-one-ment. And then, straight out, in the at-one-ment between the ego and the personality lies hid the mystery of the Christian doctrine of the atonement.
That's a big sentence to drop in a paragraph.
Enormous. And she just walks on. I mean, think about what it opens up. The doctrine stops having to be about a debt paid on your behalf, somewhere outside you. It can be about the parts of your own being, the soul and the person, being made one, which, notice, doesn't shrink the teaching. It brings it home.
And there's a first unification we've all already been through, she points out. Individualization itself. The moment way back when man became a conscious, rational entity. That was an at-one-ment. So the process has form. It's happened to us before.
And here's the part that I find bracing, in the way this book tends to be bracing. How does the approach to unity work? Through destruction. Her words, at-one-ment, on all levels is preceded by a burning, through the medium of the inner fire, and by the destruction, through sacrifice, of all that separates.
So union isn't accumulation at all. You don't add your way to oneness. You burn the wall down.
And she gives a concrete example of a wall. The web, an actual etheric membrane that separates the etheric body from the emotional body. There's a line I want to give you close to exact. When that web is burned away by the inner fire, communication between the vehicles of the personality becomes continuous and complete. The three lower bodies function as one.
And she says that same event has its higher analog. Though she's careful, the parallel can't be pushed to detail. The intuition corresponds to the emotional. The four higher levels of the mental plane correspond to the etheric, and the destruction of the causal body itself at the fourth initiation, which the tradition calls symbolically the crucifixion, is the same burning, one octave up.
The causal body, the soul's own temple, the thing that took the whole pilgrimage to build. And at the fourth initiation, it goes. I mean, it sounds like catastrophe until you remember the scaffolding.
Right. The scaffolding was never the building. The causal body was the bridge between spirit and person. And when those two can finally touch directly, the bridge has done its work. She says the disintegration at that initiation, the Arhat initiation, leads to unity between the ego and the monad, expressing itself through the triad, the perfect at-one-ment.
And then she gives the whole purpose of the process in 4 steps, and it reads almost like a liturgy, so let me just walk it. The whole process exists to make man consciously one, first with himself and those in incarnation with him, second with his higher self, and thus with all selves, third with his spirit, his Father in heaven, and thus with all monads, and fourth with the Logos, the 3 in 1 and the 1 in 3.
So the circle just keeps widening. Yourself and your neighbors, all souls, all spirits, God. Same movement, 4 scales. And notice there's no step where anyone is left out. You can't be at one with the Logos and estranged from your neighbor. The first step never gets repealed.
Never. And the closing beats of the chapter tell you who paid for each step, which I don't want to skip, because it might be, the most moving structure in the whole chapter. She says man becomes a conscious human being through the instrumentality of the Lords of the Flame, through their enduring sacrifice. He becomes a conscious ego at the third initiation, through the instrumentality of the Masters in the Christ, through their sacrifice in taking physical incarnation for the helping of the world. He unites with the monad at the fifth, through the instrumentality of the Lord of the world, the solitary watcher, the great sacrifice. And he becomes one with the Logos through, and this is the being's name in this book, the one about whom naught may be said.
Every rung of the ladder, someone is holding it from above, at cost. Nobody climbs alone. That's what that structure is saying. The whole thing is carried.
The whole thing is carried, which is maybe the note to end on, because next episode, we meet the ones doing the carrying. Chapter 3, The Work of the Hierarchy. What this planet's inner government does all day, their 4 lines of work, and why she calls them the elder brothers of the race.
And it's the chapter where her open-hand approach really shows. It ends with her basically saying, treat all of this as a working hypothesis, and go find out for yourself. So, a good one to bring your skepticism to.
The welcome kind of skepticism. And listen, if walking through a book this slowly is your kind of thing, we're one show and a whole family doing exactly this over at Pillar 5 Media.
One classic text per show, different hosts each time. All of it made to feel less like a lecture and more like a conversation with a friend.
Pillar5media.com has the lot.
And that's pillar, then the number 5 as a numeral, media.com. Thanks for walking this stretch with us. It was a steep one, and you stayed.
Worth it for the view, though. Next time, we knock on the hierarchy's door.
See you there.